That's what.
Yeah, I haven't heard that in so long.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Jake.
I missed you.
Oh, thanks.
Remember back in the day when we used to just hang out and drink beer and talk into microphones all the time?
God, yeah.
Those were the days. Boy, oh boy.
Man.
Well, let's do it again.
one more time.
So, welcome to Fireside
Yeah.
Tattoo Podcast, the official podcast of the Tattoo Improvement Network.
Yeah.
We are your hosts,
And we appreciate you coming back.
and we do appreciate you coming back. And so we just finished up you guys just finished up our Venice series, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. But now we got to get back to work because we've been resting a lot and not doing any podcasting. None.
We have not been resting.
We haven't been resting at all, but we haven't been doing any podcasting. So we're going to get back in the swing of it. I know it probably seems like we podcast all the time, but I literally haven't had this headset on in, I don't know, a couple of months at least.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. So today,
it's our busy season, though. You know,
it is. It's busy with busy with tattooing.
Yeah.
Busy with trying to figure out how to run a tattoo network. There is. I'm just going to stare at my phone like an asshole here for a second.
Good idea. Just
I got.
Get on
Will you get on your phone? Maybe we could
could just text each other.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
So for today's
I'm
episode,
get on Heyday real quick though. So
good thinking. For today's episode, I may not be able to find exactly who this guy was, but someone had requested us tackle a subject, and I was going to read exactly what he asked, but I have too many Instagram things, so I'm going to paraphrase.
Go ahead.
I'm going to paraphrase what he wanted to talk about. Oh, you know what I wanted to do was do some real live critiques on air. And I think we should do that if you're down for it coming up, because we've had a lot of people send in work to be critiqued. If you guys want to send in some work that you wouldn't mind being critiqued, like all live on the show, so like we'll talk about it. We'll drop the image in front of you, and we'll talk about how we critique something, like not haphazardly, but like how we follow a structure of critiquing.
How we pick and choose what we talk about first, and then go through the image.
Right. Yeah, I think that might help some people. If you want, you can email it where to, Scott? info@firesidetats.com. Email it to email some of your work. 3-4 examples.
Yeah, please.
Give it a subject line. Yeah, say critique video for the podcast, something like that. Podcast critique.
Yeah, maybe no more than like 5 images.
Yeah. We probably will only pick 1 or 2, just the ones that we feel like will benefit people the most.
Right.
But if we have a few to choose from, then that might be nice for us to kind of sit down and pick which ones.
And you get to see kind of a body of how your work starts, and
that
may be easier for us to kind of give you an idea of where you should start and stop.
Yeah. Yeah. If you are uncomfortable with your name and information being put out there, we don't have to do that.
Yeah, we definitely don't have to do that.
We can just do the critique. But anyways, I was going to do that. I was going to bring some up for today, but then I got sidetracked. But I came across this other guy's question. He asked this a couple of months ago now, but like I said, we haven't podcasted in so long that I kind of let it slip by. But basically, it's a tattooer who's recently started painting and is taking kind of a traditional approach to painting. So he's doing kind of a grisaille, like an underpainting and umbers and things like that.
Grisaille,
and then building up from there. Yeah. In tattooing, he had always just kind of gone at it all at once: value, color, shape, line, all that stuff at the same time. And so he was asking about if we felt like there was value to doing an underpainting, say basically like a grayscale, and then wash, and then putting color over the top of it. So we actually handle that differently. So I thought it was a pretty good subject. So we could both bring up the pros and cons of what we each do. You, as long as I've known you, you've done a full grayscale basic underpaint. Like you line, do all of your gray work, not just blacks, but you blend, you use light, dark, every kind of gray that you need for the entire thing, and then come back with color, often in a second sitting.
Yes, and that's the one thing that I would advise if you do the black and gray wash, if it's a very large piece, is to split them into sessions. That way you're not really tearing the person up. A lot of times you're putting a lot of gray wash into it. You're trying to affect a lot of scales and value, and if you immediately pound color back into it, which is a lot of people what they'll end up doing, you can easily tear the skin up. So I would recommend, especially on a larger piece, anything bigger than your hand, probably do it in a 2 session. If you don't need to do it in 1. If it's doable in one, and they can sit for that long, I would say you're pushing it. But I generally say if you've worked more than say 4 or 5 hours on a black and gray piece, you need to leave it alone.
Yeah. But a one sitting piece, you'll still do that. But you have learned to read the skin well enough to know when you're pushing it.
Exactly,
too far.
and sometimes then you're really pushing contrast with it. Not so much depending on how big the piece is. You can only put so much grayscale into it at those smaller pieces. So you're not sometimes putting nearly as much as you would on a larger scale piece. And probably what you'll talk about too. It's sometimes easier on some of the smaller pieces to do it a little more painterly, where you're affecting it with black maybe back into your ink, so affect the overall value of it immediately in the ink, and not so much in the after, and as the color sinks and sets into it, more like a glazing effect.
Yeah. I would agree that the larger pieces, there's plenty of value in going in and doing a complete, basically doing a gray wash through the entire thing. I do it a little differently in that I don't get into a lot of subtle grays, but I basically do a black wash. You know what I mean? I'm basically using black, but I'm sculpting. I'm determining my light source. I'm establishing my hierarchy of shapes, that kind of thing, like knowing what's in my foreground, what's in my background, where are my darks, where are my lights. And it just helps me to describe what that thing is going to be in the long term.
Especially when you want very dramatic darks and lights. It really helps to have something, a gray wash in there, and your true darks are at the edges of those, so that there's not just a blended value to value where you're hoping to get something later where it may turn in, basically get muddy.
Right.
If you want really true darks, put it in as an underwash, and you'll get that kind of effect. I think that I don't know what he's looking for, but if he's trying to get a more of a painterly effect, and he's noticing that often when you're glazing the colors back into it, and that's what you will change how you tattoo depending on if you want that to inform your tattooing. So if he's working with under grease eye painting, often he'll see that he's then layering his colors back on very light and very. At a time, he's doing just these lighter washes that he can build up, and that's what I think it's probably the advantage. If you want to do that in your tattooing, you can build those up slowly and affect them as much as you want slowly. While if you do it on maybe a painterly effect, you have a harder time changing those later if you've already affected the value in your color as affected the value as the underwash of it. So I guess there are pros and cons, but it's depending on what effect you're looking for. Exactly, what effect you're looking for. And if you're trying to pull your painting that is that grease eye glazing back into your tattooing. If that's not how you want to, if you're just doing that as an effect and trying to learn how to do that, you may not want that to inform your tattooing at all. Especially if you're doing it as more of a, say, I don't mean in old school, but if you don't use a lot of washes and you don't use a lot of tonal grays, and you're not building a lot of different kind of washes, it may not matter that much.
Yeah,
that's what I say. If you're going to put a gray wash scale in underneath it, you might as well make 5 gray washes and have your true blacks, and then really work on a large scale from dark to light. It is a little more work, but I think the larger the piece, it really helps.
Definitely. I think that I went through a phase where I did it all together. I didn't lay any kind of a gray wash. I basically mixed my values and my colors together, and that was mostly on smaller pieces. Yeah. I do almost exclusively large scale work nowadays, and I think it's helped me so much to make large value based decisions. The thing with trying to handle color and value and form all together is you're making a lot of decisions that can kind of cross over, and it could be easy to mess up. It's not real it's easy to lose track when you're dealing with high key colors of where they are on a value scale. So if you're trying to you grab this true blue and you mix it out, you might think that's a lighter color, you might think it's a darker color than it really is. And if you're pounding that in there early on in the tattoo and it's a large scale tattoo, you might realize, oh shit, that should have been 3 values lighter. Right. Whereas if you approach it from a value standpoint first, then you're thinking in masses. All right, this area, this is a big dark shape. This is a big light shape. This is this is more important to me than this, so I want this to come forward, and this is the decision I'm going to make it come forward.
Yeah, I think that once you've established your dark to lights, that's exactly what you'll do. You'll also normally most artists work from dark to light anyway. Your color spectrum almost, depending on where you're working, almost demands it. So you're not wiping back into your lighter colors. So I often find that it's easier to go ahead and make sure that I'm getting my true darks and how heavy a piece should be, because my lights are easy to push. But I guess that depends on whether you're having problems in that direction or not.
Yeah.
I like to, like I said, start probably in the light to medium scale, work dark for a second, and then lighten up when I need to on the edges and stuff.
I
think
you do start more mid-tone and get dark.
Yeah. I think I need to, because I forget also, like, well, a lot of times I don't commit to true darks, and I've been trying to do that more and more and more. And to do that, you just have to have blackout, and you have to you have to make sure that. I mean, it sounds stupid, but you often find that it's like, oh, you don't like. Do I really want it that dark? Yeah, you probably really do. I mean, it sounds. But you especially on a skin tone, when you want to have true highlights, when you want to move the eye through a piece, you have to have that. And it takes more time, but I think that it's worth it. And again, often with mine, I do break the tattoo sessions down that way, where that first session may be just the line work. The second session is maybe just all of the black and gray work, all of the values laid out. Once that's completely healed and I start my color, if I need to do any kind of changes, I still have the ability, and it's usually to go darker. It's not to go lighter, of course, but almost always you're going to want it even to go deeper, so that you can get some true dark to lights in the piece.
Yeah, and the good thing about that approach, and that's a real traditional approach. People that have been tattooing for years and years have done that, and that's where that idea came from. And it's the reason that it's a good idea is that the tattoo is at a stage of completeness at each session. You know what I mean? All your line work is there. It's easy to look at it and see what it's going to be. All your gray work is there. It's easy to see what direction it's going. Maybe color takes more than one sitting, but sometimes whenever you see, it's important to people, I think, that are walking around with big pieces that they're investing a lot of time and money in, and if they're walking around for 5-6 weeks with it at a halfway point, they want it to for people to at least be able to see where it's going,
right?
And and you'll find that when you approach it that way, they'll come to you and they'll be like, everyone thinks this piece is finished. They think it looks good like this.
I was about to say the thing. You'll almost always find that people think that it's nearly done at that stage, and that often sometimes people will second guess and go like, well, maybe I'll just keep it in gray. It's like, well, if you're going to do that, let me at least do some tonal, some white, some other things like that. But some people that are on the fence, whether they want a black and gray piece or a color piece, you can often find that, maximizing your black and gray, even if you think it's just going to stay as a black and gray piece, it's very easy to put color into later. There are a lot of people who change their minds about that. I've had it where, probably like you said, about 50% of my people, when they're out in the world, think that most people are like, oh, well, it's done. What are you going to do? How can it be done?
What else are they going to do
to it? It's finished, right?
No. The only...
I love that, though. I love black and gray pieces as much as color, and so I think it also gives them that ability, like you said, to look at it and really critique it, or really grow to love it, or find anything before you get into the true big color stuff, the stuff that they're really going to have to live with. If there's any changes, you can still do it. And I've had to add to pieces or whatever, do little changes before I did the color.
Yeah. The only thing that I really handle differently, if I'm going to finish something in grayscale as opposed to if I'm going to lay color into it, is when I get into that lighter range of the value scale, I tend to leave that stuff out, because sometimes when you're going to lay lighter colors over it, you'll end up with a murkiness if you've laid any like your level 1 or level 2 grays through there. You know what I mean? If you start laying a yellow or a light blue into that, sometimes it gets a little murky on you. So a lot of times, if I'm gonna leave it, or no, all the time, if I'm gonna bring color into it, I'm really only using black and maybe my number 4 gray, my next to darkest gray. And if I want it to get lighter, then I just vary my pressure a little bit. I'll move a little quicker, I'll stay a little lighter, and I'll whip a little more, and I can get enough of that. I can turn that form enough that I can pull into it with color once it's healed and make that transition, I think, nice and clean. But definitely on the bigger pieces, I think it's Yeah, I mean, unless you're just really, really confident in your ability to make color and value decisions at the same time, which not that many people are that good at.
Yeah.
It's a good idea to do it.
That and a lot of people, you might, I don't know how to, like, you might start second guessing yourself on that, where you're putting one color in, another color in, and you're starting to get muddy. I've seen it happen where they're trying to make unusual chromatic colors and they're just not working. They're trying to avoid really high key stuff, but they don't know how to do that either. You know, I definitely. Like you said, if you do an entire like full black and gray piece and you put all these like high key colors on top of it, it will look like a nightmare. You really need to, if you're putting that much effort into it, is that you really should be be a little bit more of an observation, like not photorealistic, but at least make sure that you know where your darks and your lights are supposed to be, not just an all around put shading everywhere. All of a sudden now it's at all the same value. You know, like the reason that you're doing it is that so you can really have some true darks to true lights, and if you're not real comfortable with doing that too, yet it's like don't go all don't put your darks in first. Learn how to make some washes and build up. Don't like how, like you said, to put straight blacks and other things back into your just straight colors and work with them and still get a painterly effect and still work with the values. While the average person, if you've never done that, if you're just like, oh, I'm going to just affect my, especially how many colors have white in them and how many, instantly you're changing the chroma, the actual value of it. I said, just be wary. Don't just start making all your colors like neutralized colors or definitely don't make entire pieces that are all high key with like beautiful gray wash, grisaille underpaintings. I guess there's something to temper between the two. It's like, and if you're I think if you're an old school or traditional artist and you want to start like pushing your body of work where you're creating dimension in them instead of a very flat and a very like devalued kind of thing, I think it's great for you. Especially if you're getting into painting and you want to understand how that works into tattooing, it's a great way to push it. But just realize that it also is a more time it has more time involved in it. You just are going to have to like I said, one, talk your customers into it, and two, show them what it really does in the end, and they'll see. Like you said, they'll walk out of there going, "Wow, I can really see the dark side. I can really see where this is going. I can." And then generally, what I do is after that is let them pick. Sometimes, if I know that half sleeve or three-quarter sleeve or whatever, I let them pick what's the next thing that they want to see colored after that, and that way, I can really go in the lightest spots or the darkest spots whenever I want.
Because all the main decisions, all the biggest problems have been solved.
Half of them.
Yeah.
Three-quarters of them.
Yeah, that's what I think if I had to say the biggest value to approaching a tattoo that way of laying in your values first is that you get all of the structural problems out of the way. And I know I exaggerate it and people don't always agree with it, but I feel like if you understand value and how to turn a form and make it look believable, you almost can't mess color up. Color can go almost anywhere as long as the value is right. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to that. You probably can mess color up. But the point is value is always more important than color in the structure of a drawing. Just because people with eyeballs know what light does to form. Whether or not they know how to draw, they know when something's wrong. Maybe they can't tell you what's wrong, but if that light's coming from 3 different places or if the shadow casts the wrong way, people know it. They're like, something's jacked up about my tattoo. I can't tell what it is, but it ain't right. And if you learn to solve those problems, well, man, whether that shape is blue or green or pink or purple, it doesn't matter. I mean, you solved the biggest problems, and that was the making sure that it looked like it was a real thing that could exist in space.
Yeah, and especially if you've ever seen, you see the best portraits and things like that, they all have the most dramatic lighting, and that's a part of it. That being able to create that light and then create where those colors sit in that form is super important. But like I said, once you've got those grays, those black and grays out of the way, those true like devalued edges, whatever you're trying to, kind of attempt with it. I think, like you said, you've got a better body to go with, especially if you're going to start glazing color back into it. And you see a lot of tattooists that you would not believe that do a lot of glazing in other work, because you never really you often see the session pieces where they're like, oh, here's this dragon, he's got this base color in, now he's got another color in. 2 sessions later, there's like 5 more colors that have been blended in. I mean, it's because the gray wash will allow for that to keep blending the values truly slowly and glaze your colors in. And like you said, then laying like your gray wash lines back in, where you put color wash lines back on top of that. Once you get a really good facile work with your gray wash, it'll only inform you for a lot of other ticky tricks that you can do. I think a lot of when you're trying to get a little more realistic, or trying to get I don't know, this like a new school kind of
or just
work.
making stuff that looks believable or that looks real.
Yeah, definitely, it will look more believable. But often I see if you're not comfortable with like looking at objects in dimension and drawing them, that's what you should work on as well. Like on the side, look and draw glass objects or
in the real world.
In the real world.
In the real world, not from pictures that you took of them. That's actually at the thing.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but
it makes all the difference in the world.
It'll really inform you, though.
Yeah. We're I'm right in the middle of this Inside Fireside membership group. We have a small group of people that we're taking through some fundamental drawing exercises. We shipped them these skulls that are right there, and they've been drawing the shit out of skulls, and they're getting good at it. And none of them were comfortable drawing from life when we started, because they're just like, man, I haven't done this since I was in art school.
Right.
Like, yeah, most people haven't. But, man, there's just no substitute for it. There's just no substitute.
I mean, there's so many things around you that you should want to draw anyway. I mean, people often say that it's like, oh, I don't know what to draw. I don't know. It's like, look around you. My God. If you can't draw what's in front of you, you've got no chance.
Yeah. And it's a challenge, you know?
I'm saying, if you're really that bored and you can't pick up and put some flowers
you can't
or
make the
grass
effort to draw what's in front of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You'll never have a chance. Like you said, if you can't just sit down with your classic still life and like I said, something that's in the midst, so you can really get something out of it. I mean, have some dramatic light set up so you can really see what those differences are. You can control that, and then again, you can bring those into your drawings, and then bring those into your tattoos.
Yeah. If you're very new with this idea, I think 2 things you should think about. And I know you approach midtones and work darker, and I think that works fine. But the one thing that I think we would both agree on that inexperienced or young artists do is they stay too neutral. They get scared to really get in there and commit and make something dark.
It's true.
I think you need to find a way to push contrast more than you're comfortable with. And if doing a grayscale version before you lay color in, if you want to do that, I think it's a great tool to do it. Just make sure that you're getting your darks dark and you don't have a bunch of half-assed attempts at getting your, if you've got if you got a cast shadow, that thing's probably dark. Make it dark. And second, if it's going to have color in it, maybe don't finish like your lights in that grayscale. Let your lightest, if you're thinking about a family of dark and a family of light, you're looking at a sphere and the light's coming from here, so you have all the way up to where the halftone where it turns, you've got lights and then darks, and there are probably 3 or 4 values in each of those. These light values, just leave them light and let your colors make that decision if you're inexperienced, because it's real easy if you start laying grays, light grays all across there, and you decide you want to have a nice high key light color, you're not going to get that thing as vibrant as you want it to be. It's going to look murky. So maybe leave your light family's skin tone and work from your mediums all the way through your darks.
Yeah. And if you're uncomfortable with making like very valued changes, you're going to get better at it if you because that's exactly what gray wash will make you good at. If you've had problems with like working even your values next to each other in your colors, it's going to help with that, because understanding how your needle really works and seeing it actually make true gray washes and good ones, it'll really help your work, I promise you.
Yeah.
I mean, just being capable and competent with making those strokes and trying to attain like true valued grays, like from dark to light, where that will always inform you better in your work, whether you know it or not.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, especially large scale grays where you're having to do it in large spaces. So, like, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then once you get through that, the next step in this process is understanding what value your colors have, where the colors that you're using sit on the value scale. So if if you've got a light area and you just pick a blue that you like, really make sure you understand where that blue is on the value scale, because sometimes people confuse high key colors with high or light value colors. A lot of your highest key colors are right dead and smack in the middle of the value scale.
Right.
They're not very light at all. And then you end up with a really dark image overall, and you can't figure out why it happened because you used all these bright, pretty colors, but they're dark.
Yeah, we've never really talked about that, how a lot of colors are really made to be mixed out of. They're like either mixed down up, either with other ones to neutralize one another. Often most colors right out of the bottle are not just great. You really, after using them a while, you'll notice that you really want to change them.
Yeah.
Like some way, like adding a little seafoam green, adding a little bit of white and something else, if you want it to flatten a little, maybe a little orange, something in there that will help neutralize it a little, and then you'll find better colors that way. You'll find your own colors mixing out of it. But often, if you use them straight out of the bottle, you're going to probably have some problems, working straight into it.
And I know we've probably tackled this before. I know I've talked about it with some of our guests on the show of having all the color options that we have now, and people tend to use a lot out of the bottle because there's so many options. But I really think it's important. We did a Limit Your Palette show a year ago, probably now. Who knows? But it's really, really important for you to understand how you get to these muted off tones from your primaries. Because if you don't, then you don't really see what's in all these muted flesh tone colors and things like that. If you learn how to mix them and get to them that way, then if you find one that you use all the time, if you find you're constantly mixing this tone out of these three colors because you love it, and they make a bottle of it, great, go get it. You know how to get to that now. You've solved that problem. You've earned the right to buy that color. But I really think you need to learn how to
mix it first.
You need to learn how to mix it first.
Or at least get close to it. I mean, if you can, that way you're really, like I said, the day that you run out of that color, that's what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're in trouble. Like, oh shit, I
I
don't have apricot. I can't do this tattoo.
Yeah, my apricot burst is out.
yeah, exactly. I don't. We don't make anything for saying it. I don't think. Are we selling Russ's digital wheel yet, or have we not set that up? I can't remember. Is it on the website? The digital color wheel. So I don't think we may have it on the website. I can't remember if we have it up yet. I think we're selling the digital version of it. But Russ Abbott's color wheel is really good for that purpose, if nothing else. If you feel like you understand color theory, great. But the beauty of what he's done with this color wheel is that he's taken the actual inks that you use from Eternal, from Fusion, from Solid Ink, from all these people, and he's placed them on a value scale. So you can look, if you've got apricot, you can look at it on the value scale, and you can say, okay, so I've already used hot chocolate, whatever, and now I'm using apricot. Is it lighter or darker than hot chocolate? That's not easy to tell when you put them in a cap, but if you can look at them on a thing where they've measured it out and scientifically laid it out, it's pretty cool. And honestly, that is exactly how I use that thing. I don't use it to make families of color decisions. I don't use it to design my palette. I use it whenever I'm getting colors out, and if I don't know exactly where that color sits, I will look it up on my sticker, and I'll be like, okay, it's about it's medium. It's kind of dark. It's darker than I thought it was. Maybe I won't use that one.
I definitely don't want any apricot in my hot chocolate.
I hear you, man. No doubt. It sounds disgusting. I just pulled those two out of my ass.
That's pretty good, though.
I don't even know if hot chocolate does exist. I own that one. I don't know if apricot exists.
Mocha.
I bet
espresso.
I bet there is. I bet there is an apricot.
Well, I know there's an apricot.
Surely there is.
Absolutely. If there's a seashell, there's an apricot.
Is there a seashell?
Yeah. That's in the flesh colors of Eternal.
Oh, okay. Got you. Yeah. I bought the muted zombie, whatever. No, is it zombie colors or muted earth or something?
Yeah.
Zombie, I think, is what I bought. And man, I decided the first day that I bought it, I was like, I'm just going to use all of them today. I'm going to get them all out and see what they do. I put them all in caps and took a photo of it because I can't tell you. They all look like kind of like a dark brownish, reddish, maybe greenish. I don't know. Hard to tell. Until I actually got them out and touched them to white. I had no idea where they stood on not only a value scale but on the color scale. Like, is this red or green? I don't know. It's just like dark and muddy.
Yeah, you got to play with them.
Yeah, I've learned how to use a few of them. I don't think I'll ever buy the set again, but there are maybe 3 of those that I'll buy individually again because I use
some of
them.
those colors are really beautiful.
Rigor mortis is really nice.
I still love that smoke that they make.
Yeah, rigor mortis is like smoke, but not quite as like blue-purple. It gets a little more on the green side.
Good stuff.
You should get yourself a bottle of that
Get you some,
and thank me when you do.
yeah, get you some seashell.
I will.
Good.
I'll trade you a rigor mortis for a seashell.
Got it.
What else? Follow us on, whatever you follow us on. YouTube. YouTube
Thumbs
is where you
up.
keep up with us the best. Facebook, thumbs us up. And,
If you can, yeah.
Instagram is @Tattoo Improvement. Facebook is Fireside Tats. What else? I think YouTube's still Fireside Tats. And Twitter is Fireside. Who knows? Who knows? Google us. You'll find us.
You'll find that shit.
Yep. Thank you guys very much. Sign up for our newsletter.
If you have any questions,
If you have any questions, let us know. And do send in some, we'd be happy to do some critiques. Because honestly, we've talked about everything in the tattoo universe over 3 years of doing this.
we're still talking about it.
We're still
But I
talking
like
about
this one. I still think if you're just getting into black and gray work, it can be a lot of fun. It's a little more time intensive. It does take its, like I said, it takes its toll on some people, whatever, because you think you're putting all this in for naught, but it really comes through later. It really makes
does.
a difference.
And it's a great teaching tool.
It is. I mean, especially if you really are starting to get into it in oil painting and you want to have that same effect in tattooing, it is absolutely attainable. And what's nice about it is that even if you're doing it there, depending on how you're doing your grisaille, whether it be in grays and whites, or if it be in browns and tans.
We didn't get into that, but
that's
yeah.
right.
No, I've never even attempted that.
You'll learn a lot.
Yeah. I've never attempted that. I've done some tattoos that were kind of in like
Sepias and stuff.
sepias, yeah, but they were really like filled, like not washed, but filled. Like a color tattoo would be. But that would be an interesting experiment to do some like sepia washes, like using your. There are a lot of nice, browns that go from reds to greenish browns and everything in between. You could probably do something pretty cool with that.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. Well.
So let us know if you if you've done this and be like, oh,
I'd love to see
by
that.
the way.
Yeah. That'd be cool. I'd love to see some sepia tone or some sepia wash tattoos.
Why not? I mean, there's
Send 'em in.
engravings. There's all kinds of
Yeah.
pointillism.
Yeah, that's huge. Speaking of pointillism, our friend Nico Roussan was in town last week. I
good
saw
to
him
see
for just a
Nico.
split second.
God,
He's
riding
riding
his
his
motorcycle.
motorcycle across the country. He
And
went
to
from
Canada as well.
yeah. He went from us down to Ink and Dagger in Atlanta and tattooed. And I think he's just leaving Mike Chambers' shop up in where's that? Massachusetts or something? Or
Is he
it
up there already?
Yeah, he's leaving today. He was tattooed there for 2 or 3 days already.
Wow.
He's hauling ass on that bike.
Yeah, he wants to go up to New York and go up through into Canada, and then head back through like Detroit, back down toward Vegas and stuff.
And I would sell that bike as soon as I got back to Vegas and never get back on it. I think.
He's been getting it tuned up in every major city that he stopped in. Just as a little thing, but good for him. Man.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great to see him. His work has just gotten amazing.
Yeah,
if you
it
haven't
has.
seen it, it's just absolutely amazing.
At Nico Roussan, I think is what it is. So,
On the road,
on the road.
back to Vegas.
Yep. Thank you guys, as always, for supporting the Tattoo Improvement Network. We're out of beer, and we have some buffalo chicken we have to eat.
Sounds good to me.
Let's do it.
All right, thanks.
Have a good night.